Okay, so we're back from taking a break. Switch sides a little bit just to get some different perspectives, different lighting. So Mom, when we left off, we were talking about Whitey. Dad traveling out with Whitey, and Whitey's got a trio that he goes around singing at churches. And you guys met at whose church was it?
It
Brandon?
was Assembly of God Church in Cleveland. Um, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but I forget.
I never knew. I remember it's like half the service, but most of the people there didn't speak
Speak
English as their
English,
first
yeah.
language, and so it was a very interesting experience that you go to this church, and everyone has a thick European accent,
Mhm.
very interesting, and
Mhm.
and and that's where you and Dad meet.
Yes. And we did have some English people come, not too many, but most of them came from Europe. They were Polish, Ukrainian, and Slovaks. And it was just a church, not too many young people there. And so I was looking for I wanted to get married, but there was nobody in our church that I would
Right,
even be
interesting.
interested in. And so when your dad came, um, well, he was a prospect, and I didn't know. I thought he would be interested in Maria because he was more her age than my age. And he asked me to go out to him to not it was Kentucky Fried Chicken, uh, Colonel Sanders, and we went out there. Different times he would come to church. He would come to church on Sundays and spend the whole day with us, and then come back even on Wednesday nights. Those two times a week that we would see each other, and we dated for about 3 months, and then he uh, he asked Mom if he could marry me. And she said, yeah, because he was a Christian. And he just became a Christian like in February. And so he was a brand new Christian. And so um, I thought, well, I wanted somebody a little older than me because I never had a dad. So I thought, well, that would be a good thing. So after 3 months, we were engaged, and 3 months down the road, we were married.
So you knew each other 6 months total.
Yeah, total 6 months. Yeah. And then we had a wedding at that church, and it was a nice wedding. It was really a nice wedding. So after that, I moved to Akron. That's where he lived. That's where his business was. And then Tammy came along like a year after.
Was when you guys first got married, was Dad working on his own? Did he have his own shop
No,
then, or was he still
no,
working for
he was
Whitey?
still working for Whitey, and Whitey, oh, he just messed up. That's all I know. And so Neil didn't want to be under that umbrella. So he moved and got a shop of his own in Akron, away from Whitey.
Mhm.
And he was uh, a good barber. He was really good. A Highland Square, that's where he got the barber shop. And he worked there for a long time.
And you bought the house, Firestone
Uh,
Park and
yeah,
Annandale Avenue.
Annandale. And our first house we only paid like
13,000.
13,500,
Yes, yes.
which was incredible. It was a cute little house. We loved it. And your dad put the another room upstairs.
I remember finished the attic off. Yeah, and that
And
was
so
your guys' bedroom.
Neil and I had the bedroom upstairs because it was big, humongous thing. And Tammy and Scott lived in the bedrooms downstairs. It was only two-bedroom house, but we loved it. We loved it.
Mhm.
And then after 7 years, my husband was, did I go in there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was so interested in Teen Challenge. He heard about David Wilkerson, and David was involved with Teen Challenge, a drug rehab program that he started. And there was one opened up in Perry, Ohio, east of Cleveland. And my husband would go and take food over there and cut the boys' hair. And that would be almost every month that he would do that. There was a guy in our church in a Springfield Assembly that had a case egg and poultry, and he would give him the food that he needed to take up there. So it was a blessing. And I thought that would satisfy him, but that did not quite satisfy your dad. I thought that, he's doing what he thought he wanted to do, but he somehow wanted to go into it full time. And I thought it was his idea, not God's idea, okay?
And so he's going up volunteering at this place that's a drug and alcohol residential rehabilitation program.
Right.
And so the guys that are there have had trouble both with the law and with
Mhm.
addiction,
Mhm.
and he'd go up and spend time cutting hair
With
because
that,
he was a
yeah.
barber. He'd cut their hair,
Yeah,
deliver some food for
he's
them.
using his talent that he was trained to cut hair, and I thought that would be good enough.
Mhm.
But the other idea, I thought it was all his idea, not God's idea, okay? And I actually, when he thought wanted to go and work for go full time with it, I thought, no, we're not going there. I said, I've never been on drugs. I wouldn't know how to relate to any of the guys there. There were ages from 18 to whatever, 70, 80, whatever. They all had problems and they all were in courts, and he was just interested in it more than I realized. So, I fought it. I fought it. I didn't want to go there. I just want to be a normal person. I didn't want to go into ministry, and especially drug addicts, with working with drug addicts. And so that went on for years. He did that, and
How
then
many years? How many years?
I'm not 100% sure, but
I know
because
we left Akron, and I had finished kindergarten in Akron, so I
yes.
was born. Tammy was been like I was going to start first grade. Tammy was going to start third grade when we moved there.
Hmm.
So
I
so
thought it was first grade you started or
I started
kindergarten.
no, I started kindergarten in Akron, and when we moved,
Oh,
I went into first
okay.
grade, and Tammy went into third grade.
Okay, so he's talking to God. Your dad talks to God and he says, God, we're gonna cut it off. We're not going. We're just not going. And listen to what God tells him. He says, just ask your wife to be your wife. And he says, well, she's already my wife. And another answer from God that says, just ask her to be your wife, because he was expecting me to be something more than I was not able to do. He wanted me to, like, if you're in the ministry, you need to know how to play the piano. You need to know how to sing. You need to know how to preach sometimes. And I didn't have those gifts, so I thought we're not going there, especially working with drug addicts. So
So you felt there was going to be some responsibility on your behalf
mm,
if you guys went up there that you were going to be part of this too,
right.
and you didn't feel like you were
I,
up
I
for
didn't
it.
feel qualified to do that. So I'm reading a book by Catherine Marshall. The name of the book was Something More. And she says in this book, which really touched my heart, he says, if God calls you to something that he wants you to do, it will never leave you. And I'm thinking, oh, dear God, this must be you talking to Neil, because it has never left him. But because he didn't want to break up the marriage, he says, okay, God, we're not going there. And then God says, just ask her to be your wife. So he comes home from work and and he knows I don't want to go, but he tells me that what he said to God, and that we're not going. And then I start crying because I'm realizing that it was God dealing with him. And I'm saying, no, no, no. And I start crying because I read the book and I said, well, I just heard from God and he's saying to go. So I said, we're going to go. He was totally shocked. Now, what do I do now? So he called Brother Ross, who was in charge of the program there, and asked him if he could come and work there. And he said, sure, you can, because he knew him by being there. And but one thing he asked him to do, because there were some other people that wanted to work for Teen Challenge too, and he says, I want you to raise your own support, just like missionaries do. So he started, and we were just in a church. We were not ministers or anything to where we had access to other churches. So we just went and asked people that we knew, family, to support us. That I give us $5 or whatever a month to help us to raise the money. And we did raise. It was a humiliating experience, though, to ask your friends to support you to go to work. But God worked it out to where we didn't raise the whole support, but our church in Akron, they gave us $100 a month. Each month they sent us that money. But the other people that sent us money, we didn't know where they came from. But we did raise the money for it as much as we could. And so Neil started working there. And he loved it. Now listen, he loved it so much that he thought he was in heaven doing that work. And I'm thinking, nobody loves their job that much. So, um, so he worked like almost day and night, because it's like emergency. Whenever they have a fight in the program, we had a house separate away from the center, and so he would have to go during the night to settle the dispute or whatever was going on. And but he loved every minute of it. He was not a preacher. He never claimed to be a preacher. Jose Morero was on drugs, and he was like second in command there at the Teen Challenge, and he was training my husband to do the job. And Neil would say to him, your dad would say to him, you should be the person that I'm taking. And he says, no, that's not my calling. But he would prepare a message on the bus and have it done in 15 minutes. My husband took forever to get a message going, but that was not his job at the program. And so how I fed in the situation is that Brother Ross, there was a candle shop that was going out of business, and he wanted to buy it, and bought the molds and everything that goes along with it. And he wanted to know if I wanted to help with that. I said, oh, I would love to help with that. So we started a candle shop business. They bought wax beyond measure because the candles were going fast. And they had different molds, different shapes. We were creative and all of that. We had a little building, not a building, but a room to where we had a tank of water to where you cool the candles to, and different colors, shapes, stars, and everything. And then people would want to buy them. So we had like candle parties. We would have the boys go to homes to have a candle party so we can sell them. Our church uh, put the candles in the flowers arrangement, so we had a good business going. It was a tremendous help for the Teen Challenge. So that's where I got involved with the guys, and they were so shocked that I was so naive about the world. They watched me, everything that I said or done, and I'm thinking, well, maybe this is where God wants me. So, and then our kids were going to school, and the business was taken over, and God was speaking to me to take care of the kids and not to neglect them. And I know one time you guys locked yourself up and couldn't get back in the house. So I just made sure that I was home with the kids after the school was out. Yeah. So that was, and they had a machine shop for the guys. It was a good program. It really was a good program, and we stayed there for 7 years till we began to see that the guy, Brother Ross, retired. So another guy came in, and he had a different vision for the program, and he allowed he allowed the guys to smoke, and that was not part of them being there. And so we decided we needed to move out. So we went to the board and complained about it, but they couldn't do anything about it. So we left and we went to work at the daycare, children's home in Cambridge. And I thought, Teen Challenge was not an easy job, but the children's home was 100% higher level. And these children were abused and neglected, but they always wanted to run off the premises to go to find their dads at the bar or wherever they were. And it was a tough job. It was on duty all the time. It was a real, and we stayed there the longest of any directors at the children's home. But we lived on the premises, and that was not an easy thing too. And so, anyways, that's where your home was on the farm,
Hmm.
and he loved to escape that. Well, we did have a house at the lake, and we got away from the children's home when we could, when we had a day off. Other than that, it was not an easy job. Your dad ended up in a hospital with ulcers.
Hmm.
It was, and then the Teen Challenge opened up in Wheeling. So the guy from Wheeling comes to interview my husband, and Walter Long, and he knew that he was at Cleveland Teen Challenge, so he wanted him to come and work here in Wheeling, and he kind of hired him without telling Neil that he was hired. He says, "I think he hired me, but he never said he hired me." And it was true. He did hire him. So we left it uh, uh, children's home and went to work at Teen Challenge here in Wheeling. But it was a year. Scott was his last year of high school in Cambridge, and so he didn't want to go to Wheeling High School because there were like thousands of kids there. So he went to Shenandoah. So him and I and Neil too lived at the lake for a year, and Neil would travel from there to Teen Challenge. It took about an hour, I think, and so that was that part of the program there.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it's something you didn't like. The children's home was not a place that you
No, no,
enjoyed.
none of us liked the children's home.
And I think the children at the children's home resented Scott, or Tammy seemed to get along with the kids there, the girls there, but they resented him because he had a mom and dad, and they didn't. I think it was a jealousy thing. I don't know for sure, but that's just what I think.
Yeah.
But it was not a
And
pleasant.
so from you left Seneca Lake after I graduated high school, and you moved to Wheeling, and you've been there ever since.
Mhm. And then you lived on the farm. Did you live on the farm
Yeah, I
then?
lived on the farm for a little bit and moved all over. Ended up living in Michigan for a while, and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. But
Hmm.
that's kind of the whole
Different.
your story
Yeah.
of coming from Europe to the United States. You know, yeah, that's a journey that you made. I mean, it's 2024. We're almost at 2024.
Hmm.
The the world was such a different world when you were born than what it is now.
Yeah. Now, communism was not good at that particular time when we were there because they were strict about controlling things. But now I see that it's worse now in our nation with the communism, socialism taking over. So yeah, we were still allowed to have a church in our home in Europe. We were, and we would have like a missionary come to our house, and there were very few Christians in that little village, maybe three or four families that would gather together, and we would have church all day long. We would feed them, and it would be at our house, and it was a good time too.
When your dad died, and this is backing up quite a bit, but when your dad died, they had a hard time finding a place to bury him.
Oh yes, that's true. In fact, they hmm, it was. everything is under Catholicism over there.
They're Greek Orthodox or
Greek
Greek
Orthodox,
Catholics.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so they felt that my dad was in the occult. And so they didn't want to bury him in the same cemetery. So they put him outside the cemetery. So then when Joseph well,
Gibba.
Giba came to USA, my mom wanted to put a tombstone where my dad was buried because nobody paid attention to him. And so she gave him money to buy a tombstone, and he did that. And they put it out there, and on this tombstone it says, "Here lies Joseph Alexovich till Jesus comes." And I thought that was a wonderful witness for people to know that he was not in the occult, that he was a Christian. And, but, so when Scott went to Europe, he wanted to see my dad's grave. And so I think you took pictures of it. And I think Maria was there too, my sister.
Uh, when I went there, I met Gibba. I met your dad's brother.
John.
Yeah, and they took me to the cemetery. Not unlike churches around this area at that time, the church has a in the back piece of land with the cemetery. Members of the church get buried in that cemetery. And because you guys weren't a part of the Greek Orthodox or Greek Catholic Church, and that was that whole community. There was no cemetery for him to go in because he wasn't a member of that church, and so he got buried just over the fence. The cemetery for the Greek Orthodox, there's a fence, picket fence around the whole thing, and if you're a member of that church, that's where you went. If you're not a member, um, you're kind of stuck. They had across the fence was a like a hayfield, and it was for criminals and the insane and dead. And so he's buried with them, and they're all unmarked graves. And he was buried with them. And so when I went over there and saw that and came back, because I had no idea that's where he would be, I thought he would just be in a cemetery. Um, when I came back and talked to your mom, Baba, about that, um, that's when and Giva came over because I stayed with him. I found him over there. He gave me the address of him, and by that time, Paraska had died. Uh, Giva was pretty old, and his son that you took care of, he was there.
Joseph, yeah.
Yes, and I got to meet him, and yeah. So when I came back and talked to Bob about it, because I had no idea about the story of Baba was like when I asked her about like why was he buried over there, she said she had a hard time. The body of her husband was starting to rot. They wouldn't accept him anywhere, and that's where they finally let her bury him. She had to threaten to take him all to court or something. That he's part of this community. They had to provide a place for him to be buried, and they gave her the option of he can be buried with the criminals and the insane, and that was the best she could do. And so yeah, so now I've seen pictures of it. He put the stone there. And it's funny because it's a big stone out in the middle of this field all by itself. It just looks strange, and but it's kind of funny that he's out there all by himself, and yeah, I there was no stone when I was there, and you're kind of guessing at where exactly you can see um kind of divots in the ground where certain people are buried and that dirt settles and it kind of leaves a lower impression. You can see there's a lot of people buried in this field. You don't know which one is exactly his, and so they're going by memory of I think this is approximately where he would be. It doesn't really matter. No, because the stone makes quite a statement that he's the only one on that side with a stone. So yeah, that was an interesting. Yeah, I don't remember my dad a lot other than when they brought him home when he was already um, killed. But he had a dog named Bossick, and in English it would be Barefoot.
And this dog, he loved his dog, and the dog would go to the cemetery and cry a lot, a lot. And I thought, oh, he just loved his dog, and the dog loved him. So I remember his name.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I heard stories of Bosick, and Maria always talked about Bosick,
Mhm.
and yeah,
Mhm.
he was. They were close.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a lot has happened since then. And now I'm 81 years old. I can hardly believe it.
Do
And
you remember? Was there a time in this process when you felt like that, when you first come over here, you were a Slovak person living in the United States. At what point did you become like a naturalized citizen? Do you remember that process and how that
okay,
worked?
um, I never felt like I was usually people that came from another country, they were called DPs, displaced person. My sister always felt that way.
Mhm.
And I never had to take a test because I was underage. So I automatically became U.S. citizen. So I don't know, maybe because I was younger, I didn't listen to people what they were thinking. Came here and this was going to be my home. Not that I loved it at first. In fact, uh, I was disappointed because we came at a time where it was really hot, and every time I would ride in a car in the backseat, I would get sick because of the pollution. We didn't have any cars in our little village, and so there was nothing like that attacking my body, and so I really had a hard time adjusting to everything. And
Yeah, you're going from a rural area, Vishny Orlik. When I was there, it was maybe a few hundred people, and you're moving from
yeah, I
in
think
Cleveland.
even less than it was just
Yeah,
a
it's
hundred
small.
people.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
everybody knew everybody. You knew them by name. You just knew what was going on all the time. So you were like a big family. And so leaving the country was very difficult for me. Now, I didn't see Maria crying like I did, but I was younger. And I saw my life totally changing and never going back. That was the deal that I pictured in my mind that I will never go back, and I never did go back.
Was Maria? I know you were conflicted about leaving as the only home you knew. You probably couldn't even remember your mom all that much, many details about your mom.
Mhm.
Um, how did Maria feel about moving, coming over?
I think after she was here for a while, I don't think she liked it either. She wished she would have been back because you're more comfortable with the situation that you're in. Even though we knew that USA was a land of freedom, a land of liberty, a land of plenty. We always looked at America as a prosperous country, and but she didn't feel accepted. Maybe that was it because she always felt like people looked down on her being a DP. Although we were not DPs, we came illegally to USA, but a lot of people come illegally.
Mhm.
You know.
So Maria had a very different experience. So you felt like you were part of things a little bit easier, and you were able to get married, where Maria never got
Yeah,
married,
I
so she
wanted to
was
get
always working
married,
by
and
herself.
I wasn't here that long. I was 18 years old, almost 19 when I met your dad. And so when we got married, I moved to Akron, and so my family was away from me, and she had to deal with the family issues and different things that. In Europe, if you're firstborn, you take the responsibility of your family, not somebody else. And it was different in our family. And we just,
Especially, when she comes over here, it's not like she's the oldest child anymore because you have Joe, who was the oldest of between
Yeah,
Joe and Polly, and Maria's the oldest between you two. But then there's John and Mary
my
Brenner.
stepdad had two kids too, and they didn't like mom being married to their dad, and so that caused a lot of friction right there.
And
So
at one time, you were all living in the same house, right?
at one time, yeah,
Yeah.
because my stepsister, um,
Is this Mary?
she was married, and she um, Hmm. They were trying to build a house. She married a guy that was in construction, and so they were building a house, and they needed a place to stay while they were building on the house. But it became to be a problem with her, and she had a child already, a little. So they lived upstairs, and it was difficult. It was very difficult.
And the house wasn't that big,
No, it's not. It wasn't. Yeah. Yeah. So we had like three different families in one family together.
right?
hmm Yeah.
And so his other son, so he had his daughter was the woman named Mary Brenner that I know her as Mary
Yes.
Brenner. Was
Yeah.
she older than John, or was
Yeah.
John
She's
older?
she's the oldest. Yeah.
And John went by a different name at that time,
Emil. Emil. Emil was his real name, but they call him John.
and that was he ended up joining the Navy.
Yes. And when we came, he was still in the Navy, and he would come home, and then his time was up. So, and then he got married, and so he moved out of the house.
And so out of so there was Mary Brenner, who was older, and then John, also known as Emil.
hmm
John's still alive, right?
Yeah. John is, I think, 88. I'm not sure.
Mary passed away a few years ago.
Yes. Yeah, she died of cancer.
Marie is still alive,
Yes,
but the youngest one, Polly, died.
already. Yes.
Joe's still alive.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so
And Joe's still living in the house where Mama lived.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, Joe never got married. Maria never got married.
right. hmm hmm
All right.
Is that the house that you grew up in, Joe's
No, we had another house that when we moved here. And then later on, after I was married, Mom moved to another house. And
Smaller.
so, because she had two kids with her husband, new husband, she wanted to make sure because he really helped us to come here,
Mhm.
and yeah, she decided that the house that my brother lives now, that it should be divided between my half brother and my half sister. And nothing went to us, to Maria and me. And I thought it was okay. It was okay because I was married. I didn't have to rely on anything other than just living my life. But and I don't know what I would have done if I had been in Mom's shoes, what to do. Because he did help us to come here. He supported us while we lived there, and it was hard. It was really hard to put the families together and to love each other like we should. hmm But now it doesn't matter.
Hey, life goes fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, time goes fast. Sometimes so fast. Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
yeah, yeah. And Dad's already passed away.
hmm
Marie's in a nursing home,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, life just flies by.
Yeah. So we don't know how long we're gonna still be on this earth. Whether I always believed that Jesus would come while I was still young, and now I am old, and he still hasn't come, but I'm still waiting for him to come any day. So it's much closer now than it was when I told you.
Yes,
And Scott didn't know what he was going to do since Jesus didn't come when he graduated from high school. But he's coming. He's coming. Whether it's going to be in my lifetime or not, but things are escalating real quickly. They're going quicker than I ever realized. I never dreamed that we would be in the situation that we're in right now. Never dreamed that. But it's all biblical, it's all scriptural. It's all going to come to an end, but we have to be ready because Jesus is coming, and he's coming for a person that is ready for him. And not only ready, but ready, we need to be ready too, but we need to know who Jesus is and what he did at Calvary to set us free from this corruption that we are seeing right now. And so I just want to say that God loves each and every one of us in a special way, but it's up to us if we choose to love him and accept his salvation and accept to be with him forever. So I'm thankful that Neil is in heaven and he has nothing to worry about. Now all the responsibilities on me, and I'm so thankful the house next door is sold, and I just have the responsibility here, and that's sometimes overwhelming too. But it's all working out. It's gonna all be good. Mhm.
All right. Well, then with that, we'll let that be the last word.
Anything else we need
I
to
think we're
cover?
done.
Okay.